Hello again, everybody. Let's return, should we, to the situation between Israel and Hamas. Joining us now, Mark Regev, Senior Advisor to the Prime Minister, former Israeli Ambassador to the United Kingdom. Mr. Regev, it's always good to see you. Thank you for joining us on the programme. World Health Organization says it's documented 102 attacks on healthcare facilities in Gaza since the 7th of October. How does that dovetail into international law?
Obviously, Israel does not attack civilian targets and definitely not humanitarian targets. And I don't know what their numbers are based upon. There was the famous incident in the Holocaust. What was that? In the hospital 2 weeks ago, when Hamas claimed it was an Israeli airstrike that attacked a hospital. In the end, it was a terrorist missile itself that had been fired by the terrorists in Gaza to Israel that malfunctioned and fell short. And it was proved, I think, conclusively that it was actually their rocket that landed and hit the hospital. So I don't know what these statistics are based on. I apologize. I can only tell you that we don't target humanitarian sites, while Hamas has a deliberate policy of embedding itself in hospitals. So we know for a fact that, say, in Gaza's largest hospital, the Shifa Hospital, there's an underground headquarters of Hamas, and they've actually built it there precisely because they know the hospital gives them protection.
Well, the World Health Organization is saying 102 attacks, 504 deaths, 459 injuries and damage to 39 facilities, 31 ambulances, and half the hospitals in Gaza City have come under fire. Do you recognise any of that?
I can only say that it's clear to me that the World Organization is relying on information that's supplied by the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health. I don't think they have a way to objectively find that data. Most of the information coming out of Gaza is being provided by the Hamas-controlled authorities themselves. Israel does not target humanitarian organizations, while Hamas uses the medical system. And once again, the case of Shifa Hospital is the most obvious, where they've built their command and control deliberately underneath a hospital, using all the patients and doctors there as a shield for their war machine. That's documented. That's proof. But, Kay, you shouldn't be surprised. We saw the sort of violence, the brutality Hamas is capable of when they invaded Israel and butchered our people. We saw the rapes. We saw the beheadings. We saw the burning of people alive. We saw the mass shooting of the concert goers in the ravine, the young people who were attending the open-air concert. Are you surprised that Hamas would use hospitals and medical facilities as a basis for its military terror machine?
Hundreds of people wounded, dozen kills in airstrikes on refugee camps. You say in order to kill Hamas militants. So you acknowledge that you're targeting refugee camps?
Can I, Kate, with respect, I want to take issue with the word militants, if you'll allow me. People who behead people, people who burn people alive, people who machine gun children in their cots, they're not militants, they're terrorists and should be called as such.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, let me rephrase the question. I misspoke in that case. Dozens killed in airstrikes on refugee camps. Do you think that that is proportionate in order to kill Hamas terrorists?
Our response is definitely proportionate and definitely in accordance with international law. Hamas has declared war on us, on every Israeli man, woman and child. The goal of eliminating Hamas is a legitimate goal. It's supported across the world by the United States, by governments, including your own in the United Kingdom. Hamas must be eliminated. And we will achieve that goal. Now, Hamas has made that job very difficult because they've, as I said a moment ago, they've embedded themselves, their terror machine, inside civilian neighborhoods. And we're trying to be as surgical as we can in a very difficult combat situation. But we will destroy Hamas. And in the effort, we'll try as best we can to safeguard the civilian population who we're not trying to hurt.
Sure. Mr. Ambassador, we believe that you targeted Israel, the IDF targeted an ambulance. You said it was used by Hamas. What evidence do you have of that?
We have lots of evidence about Hamas using medical facilities and ambulances historically and recently for their war machine. Once again, do you doubt that people who burn babies alive have any compulsion about using ambulances?
I'm just asking you for the evidence. I'm just asking you for the evidence.
The IDF is producing that evidence. We have intelligence, which we've shared with intelligence agencies. It's more difficult sometimes to make things public because then you have to sometimes reveal sources, but we are planning very shortly to release information that shows that Hamas has had a consistent pattern of behavior, of abusing the health system, of abusing ambulances for their own nefarious purposes. And and I don't want to see a single Gazan civilian hurt. I don't want to see anyone caught up in the crossfire between the Israeli Defense Forces and the Hamas terrorists. But what must be remembered, we didn't want this war. We didn't launch this war. We didn't start this war. We are responding to Hamas's brutal, horrific attacks on our civilian population. Israelis, frankly, refuse to live any longer next to this enclave, this terror enclave on our southern border, and we will eliminate Hamas's control of the Gaza Strip. And I think, Kay, if you'll allow me, that's not just good for Israelis. It makes them safer. They don't have to live in fear of terrorists coming across the border and butchering their children. But it's ultimately better for the Gaza Strip, for the Palestinians themselves, who deserve better than this group of fanatical, extreme terrorists. That regime has been in power for 16 years in the Gaza Strip. And what has it brought the Gazans? Only suffering, pain, and impoverishment. They themselves deserve better.
In the meantime, the region is less settled, one might suggest. Brits and the British embassy staff are being told to leave Lebanon for now. How concerned are you that this war is going to extend to the wider region?
Of course we're worried. We know that Hamas's twin sister in Lebanon, Hezbollah, also funded and armed by Iran, could create a crisis, could exploit the situation in Gaza and start a northern front. Now, Israel does not want to fight a war on two fronts. We prefer to be able to concentrate on Hamas in Gaza. But if Hezbollah does initiate a conflict, a wider conflict in the north, we are ready. And if Hamas took us by surprise on October 7th, and we played dearly, we paid in blood for the fact that we were not ready for them on October 7th. I can tell Hezbollah in the north that Israel is mobilized, Israel is watching, Israel is ready. And if they are foolish enough, if they are crazy enough to start a war, we are ready to respond, I think, expeditiously and decisively. We don't want it. We'd much prefer for the northern frontier to remain quiet, but we know it's possible and we're taking precautions, and it's clear from what you just said to me, the British government is also taking precautions.
How can it remain quiet when there are reports of 3 children and their grandmother killed in a vehicle in Lebanon? I believe Israel looking into that. What can you tell us?
I can't give you anything specific, but the Lebanese-Israeli border should be quiet, yes? And the fact is that Hezbollah over the last few weeks has been having this low-intensity warfare against us, shelling our communities. There were rockets yesterday launched against a city there in the north, Kiryat Shmona. Thankfully, we've evacuated most of the civilian population, and therefore there weren't fatalities. But Hezbollah's playing a very dangerous game. They're saying we're going to attack Israel in the border areas and keep it at that. But there's always the danger of escalation. We don't want to see an escalation, but we're ready to meet it if it happens.
What does that escalation or retaliation look like?
No, if we find a place where they're shooting rockets from Lebanon into Israel, we will seek and neutralize that target. If we see Hezbollah terrorists approaching the border, we will attack them. And we will prevent them from entering Israel and killing our people. But our policy in the north is deterrence in the north and victory in the south. That's what Israel's trying to do.
The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has been heavily criticised since the 7th of October. How do you envisage his political future when this bloody war finally ends?
Well, you're right. When the war is over, when Hamas has been defeated, yes, when there's a new situation in the Gaza Strip, then, of course, in Israel, we'll probably go back to politics as usual. And the people who don't like my prime minister will, of course, be calling for him to resign. And there'll be politics, there'll be investigations. Why was it that we were taken by surprise on October 7th? Why was it that they crossed the border so readily and butchered our people? There are all sorts of questions that need to be asked. But I have to tell you, at the moment, that's on hold because Israel has to be focused, and we are focused. And the country is united as never before into defeating this terrible, horrific terrorist threat. There'll be time for politics when that's over. But at the moment, we're in a state of national emergency, and we have to deal with the current situation. That is, defeat Hamas in Gaza.
Mr. Ambassador, we're almost out of time, but it would be remiss of me not to ask about the hostages. What is the latest situation?
I'm afraid I've got nothing positive to say yet. We would like to see them, and I know the UK government has called for their unequivocal, unconditional and immediate release. But Hamas are not suddenly Boy Scouts. They're not going to, I think, hear those humanitarian calls. They haven't allowed the Red Cross to visit any of the hostages. And I think the truth is the way to get them out, to expedite the release of hostages, is just to beef up the pressure on Hamas. And we're doing that through our military action, and we're doing it diplomatically through Hamas's allies in the Gulf. Hopefully, beefing up the pressure, Hamas will feel the heat, we'll get our hostages out.
Mr. Ambassador, we're out of time. We must leave it there. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.